Let's go to our next call here. And this is going to be Jason W.
Yeah, Commerce 510,
Ooh,
eight-handed.
not a place that I'm very familiar with, Commerce 510.
It's funny, about like 8 years ago when I first started going to Commerce, I actually saw you playing the 510 games before I was ever a subscriber. So
I've probably played mm, what's 40 hours? What is it? 40 hours times 50 weeks is 2,000. I've probably played 10,000 hours in that game, I would say. 10,000 hours between 2000. It started in 2008. And between 2008 and 2019, I would say probably 10,000 hours.
they actually have I think they had a list up for 510 3K cap.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
There was like six 510 games that night.
5K 3K cap. That's kind of an interesting approach to what I think is a good game in maximizing money. Even though it's one thing, I always want to encourage all my subscribers to straddle and make the game bigger. And people are like, oh, well, if the game's bigger, the stack to pot ratio is smaller, it's less skill. And I'm like, yeah, that's true to a certain extent, but you're playing with the same players and your hourly is going to go up even if the stack to pot ratio is going down if you're playing the double the stakes, right, with the same people. So it's always great to play double the stakes. But the thing about a setup like you just said, though, is that that's not going to attract, I think, splashy recreational players, especially if there's a 10-20 game there. I could never even imagine if that would ever be a good game. If there were 5 or 6 510 1500 cap games and then they open a 510 3K cap, that's never going to be a good game, in my opinion. In terms of
Yeah.
good game being like weak players.
I mean, especially because Commerce doesn't let you straddle either.
Yeah. Anyways, so
Cool. So yeah, I have about 1800 effective. I'm under the gun +2, and I open to 35 with ace of clubs, six of clubs.
+2, ace of clubs, six of clubs. You're first, right?
Yeah,
And this is 8-handed, you said?
yeah.
Okay.
And it folds around to the big blind who calls.
All right. When did you play this, by the way?
Like probably a week ago.
So I thought I heard that LA they're gonna put a mask mandate back in. Is that true?
Yeah, I heard about that, but I doubt
Oh,
anyone's
it's
gonna
not. It's not a definite thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a definite thing where we're gonna see people with masks again in casinos. Okay. So you opened at 35 or 30?
I opened a 35, yeah.
Okay. So your head's up
Yep.
against the big blind. Okay.
And the flop is the jack of clubs, eight of hearts, and the eight of clubs.
Jack of clubs, 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs. So you flopped the nut flush draw. Okay.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So the big blind checks, and I see bet 55.
Kind of a larger sizing, huh?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this after. Given the paired board, I probably could have gone with 35 or 40.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're early. You're in early position, and he's in the big blind. I mean, it's not as extreme as some of the, I just played the main event, the crazy, crazy odds that people get in tournaments. Normally, when you see a large sizing, it's reflected in the fact that people know that they're going to have to defend lighter with any pair. So if you opened UTG in a 9-handed game, and the big blind called, and the board came out low but not connecting, meaning that there was really no logical 2-pair, 9 deuce 3, 8 deuce 3, you're definitely allowed to go large, or 7 deuce deuce, 7 3 3, where sort of trips are out of somebody's range. Also, too, early versus early. Allowed to go large because of the fact that they're gonna have to, supposedly they're supposed to, they can't fold a pair. So you sort of get the max value in that particular sense. This one's a little bit different. Jack 8-8. It's interesting that you take the 2/3 sizing, but I would imagine that he has more 8x than you do. Although you did open a 3.5, so interesting. So you go 55, okay?
Yeah, the 35 was pretty much the standard open all night.
Right. So he calls, right?
Oh yeah, he calls.
So looks like it's 185 now. Okay.
Yeah. And the turn is the five of diamonds. Pretty
Five of
much a brick.
diamonds. Yep.
It doesn't do anything to improve my range. So, I mean, most of the time with some of my, like with most of my draws, I'm probably going to check. But in this case, I would normally continue with, all my value hands, open enders, and my better flush draws. So I just continued for 110.
I mean, the only thing that here's the thing that I would say. This reminds me of a call that we got last week. When you take the larger sizing on the flop, what do you think his? Because when you start to take 55, when it's Jack 8-8 and you bet 55 on the flop, I think that some of the smaller pairs are supposed to fold out, especially without a club. This is one of these things that's a little bit counterintuitive for some people to come into poker a little bit like new to poker. Like if you had pocket threes through like pocket sixes, that's more of a fold on Jack 8-8 than say like having like ace 10 with the ace of clubs. Even though they're better hands, they're stronger hands right now.
Right.
It's more of an issue of the realized equity that you can never really improve, and the other holdings that have equity, backdoor equity, or might possibly be good now with ace high can improve. So when you start to take that large sizing at 55, I don't know if someone's calling here with, say, like sixes with the six of clubs, fours with the four of clubs, threes with the three of clubs, sevens with the seven of clubs. The reason why I bring that up is because what's going to fold now when you bet? Like if those hands aren't in there, what folds now when you bet? Like I don't know what's going to fold out now on a five of diamonds that called your 55 on the flop is my point on Jack 8-8-5.
Right. It doesn't really change anything because he has all the suited connectors and he has all the open-ended draws.
And Jack X, you're ahead of 7, 9, 9, 10, right? Some of these interior straight draws, queen 10.
Right.
And if you want to make a hero call down at the end, you can do that, although your combo isn't the greatest because you have the front door clubs. I don't know if I'd be betting here all that much, is basically
Even
what I would say.
Would the rationale be like you're charging him to draw?
You mean just as for like a value bet, you mean?
Just like my turn bet, like basically.
I don't know if you're going to get straight draws to call 110 here. If they don't have flush draws. If you want to make a protection bet just to not allow him to get like a free card, then protection bets are usually much, much smaller, like 1/4 to like 1/3, like 50 or 60, something like that.
Okay. So I pretty much should have structured both flop and turn a lot smaller.
Now someone says betting 200 here with like an 80% frequency. I mean, again, that might be theoretic. I don't know if that's theoretically correct, but that's if you were to go with a large sizing here on the turn, then it must be a give up at the end, I would assume, because then he's just going to have a jack or an 8 all the time. And I guess my point is that I think the caller could do that if he took a smaller flop sizing, but the whole 55 thing is a little bit odd to go 55 and then 200, something like that. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of your in between sizing. But okay, so you go 110.
Okay. And then
he calls again.
He calls, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know like what he's folding out there. So big blind calls, and the pot is like 405, right?
Right. So the river is the 10 of clubs.
Okay, so you make a flush.
Yeah.
So again, hero has ace of clubs, 6 of clubs from +2, raises to 35, big blind calls, jack 8-8, check 55 call with a nut flush draw, turn, which we just talked about extensively, is the 5 of diamonds, check, hero bets 110 call, pot's 405, river's the 10 of clubs. Okay.
Right. And then he actually leads for 360.
So now big blind leads for 360, which is nearly the size of the pot, right? Nearly the size of the pot. And you have ace-6 of clubs, so obviously your question here is whether or not you want to raise, right? Or just call, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just wasn't sure if I'm supposed to raise here.
I think that I would probably raise. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like I mean, I know it's the guy in the big blind and he can be wider, right? So it's fair. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different than, it's a little bit different than if someone was in the field or something like that. But at the same time, what boats does he have here? I mean, I guess once in a while he could have Jack 8 suited. I guess he could have flatted with Jack Jack once in a great 10 10 5 5. Yeah, 10 10 5 5.
He doesn't have Jacks.
No one called in between, right? Maybe sometimes it doesn't get 3-bet off. And then there are other flushes, but then there's some straights here too that come in, right? Like 9 7. What if he just had an 8? You're continuing to bet the turn here. And he now, although that would kind of be a little bit strange for him to just go call the.
I mean, if I raise and he,
I don't know why he would check call. Yeah, I don't know why he would check call here with an 8 and then leave the club.
I'm just calling. I'm calling it off, basically. Like,
well, I mean, that's the other thing too is that you got to watch your stack depth here, right? If you don't have enough money to like raise, fold, or it's kind of
right.
It's kind of difficult, but I just think that you're good more often here. I mean, put it this way: like the hand that he might turn into a bluff gets paired up here, right, with like 9 10 and Queen 10, which are straight draws. So I don't really think I'm not afraid of those hands like that are bluffs. I don't really think he has a bluff here. Like I just almost never with this distribution expect him to fold if you raise. So then it's really just a question of, are you ahead more often than not, given this line? What about all the flushing combos?
Wait, so you don't think he's going to fold if I raise?
As long as you keep like the raise size in check, I don't think he's bluffing. I can't really come up with a bluff because
I was thinking like calling. I was actually thinking calling might be better just because he's not really calling with any worse hands. Like
you don't think when he leads for 360, if you make it like 800, you don't think he's going to call with a flush?
Yeah, that's true.
Or even a straight. You don't have to make it that large. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to really make it all that large. Someone also points out that there is straight flushes out there, Queen 9 of clubs and 9 7 of clubs. I think it's probably pretty close. Maybe it's a little bit closer than I think. At what point would you do an auto raise if he had bet like half the pot? Half the size of the pot?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, his lead was really pretty large, so I just was like kind of stuck for a second, like thinking, I mean, if I'm gonna like min click it essentially, then he comes over the top. I have somewhat of a tough decision, but I'm probably gonna end up calling anyways.
I'm a little bit torn here because a naked 8 just doesn't. I don't think it's gonna take a line like this of check call, and then lead when the club comes. Somebody else says Jack 10. That's absurd.
He's kind of slow playing like he has a boat. He's kind of playing it like he has a boat. And he wants to get value on the river.
Well, it is usually a nutted type of hand. I'm just pointing out that there's no, he's not going to snap flow. Put it this way. He's not going to snap full because he has a bluff, because I don't think that he's going to run into a 10 and it's going to usually just be checked down at the end. So really it's value. And then it's a question of, will that value call a raise? And I think my point is if you keep the sizing in check, it will. So that's why I tend to want to go like 750, 800. What ended up happening here?
Right. So I just called, okay. I flatted, and then he showed 7 of spades, 9 of spades.
For a straight?
Yeah.
7 of spades, 9 of spades for a straight. I just think that if you go 350, I mean, that might actually be the one of the hands that maybe he doesn't call with, although the pot odds that you're going to lay him on a small raise are kind of incredible, right? Like, he bets 360 and a 405. The pot is 765. If you go to like 750, the pot's going to be like 1500, right? Like 400 for him to call. He's going to get like 4-1 on a small raise. So YG says most worse folds or raise, only better calls. I mean, I just vehemently disagree.
Well, I mean, put it this way, like if I did like, raise to 800 and he ends up jamming, are you ever folding with my stack dev?
Well, that's another consideration too, because if you're not prepared to necessarily raise fold, then you open your stack up a lot. If you started with 800, I mean, we'd have to do the math out. It would be, I don't think you're going to really get three bet all that much though. If he
I have like 1,000 left.
if he three bets jacks pre-flop, what are you getting three bet by on the river? 4 8s.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things when you get into these spots that like you really shouldn't be three bet here on the river. In certain situations on high card types of runouts. So
Unless he just like spikes the 10 with pocket tens or something.
is he even going to bet three bet that? I mean, maybe because the club comes in, but I mean, again, you're sort of going down that. I don't know if he three bets that. I don't even know if he bet three bets that. If you raise the river, these things are so strong. So if we're talking about that being his threshold, then yeah, you'd want to raise fold, but you have to like look at your stack depth and figure out if you want to do that or not. So
Do you think it's a mistake by him to lead?
Listen, I don't think leading the river when you make your draw at the sort of mid to small stakes of Live No Limit is ever really a mistake. It really depends on sort of the level of gameplay here. I mean, if it's a mid to higher stakes game and it's a tougher game, then yeah, it's a little bit out of whack and it's very unbalanced. But for most people who especially are watching this at the low to sort of small stakes, that's a big mistake that they make when they make a hand and they check, because your opponents aren't bluffing enough or value betting thinly enough for that to be the right play. So again, there's a lot of like haziness in this one where I can't give you a definite answer, but I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Bart.
All right.